Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about how to create a PowerPoint planning outline. This is distinct from some of the other presentations we've done because we're focusing specifically on a outline where you are intending to have some rather extensive written remarks that you will read, but that you don't want to have filling the slides. So let's take a look at our starting point here, which is going to be an assignment from the CONR program. So we're going to look at this assignment from CONR 632, and then we'll use that as our entry point to look at a real world case where you might be developing something like this. So this is coming from the conflict management in healthcare organizations. And like any other large organization, healthcare organizations can have many different personalities, many different preferences, and competing priorities. This assignment asks you to imagine that you're the human resources director in a large healthcare system. And for anyone who's worked in healthcare, this is probably immediately saying, ooh, I imagine that there's going to be a lot of complaints about how things do this due to differences in training and differences in priorities and limited resources, of which time is, of course, a limited resource. So let's look at some of the details. You have noticed an increase in complaints related to conflict between departments and employees. You've approached the CEO about piloting a conflict management program for employees. The CEO is open to the idea, but hesitant because he thinks that it might send the wrong message to employees since he views conflict as a negative term. He has asked you to create a PowerPoint presentation explaining your assertion that conflict is inherent in the healthcare setting and discussing the importance of constructive conflict. And then there's some associated reading that will guide doing this assignment. Let's look at the PowerPoint side of it. Prepare a PowerPoint presentation where you highlight the need for conflict management in a healthcare setting and present the importance of approaching conflict as an opportunity. And you can see in the bottom half of the slide, we have a rubric that lays out the approximate space to be spending on each of these. Now, looking at this, there's some variation. Like if you went on the high side, you'd have 3 plus 2 plus 2, that's 7, plus 2, that's 9, plus 1, 10 slides. But if we keep looking, we see that in the rubric, there's actually an additional instruction here that you might not otherwise notice. So we're supposed to be coming at in 7 to 8. So although there is room to make one of these longer, you really want to limit the number of things that are more than the minimum. And that's actually a good idea for presentations in general, because usually you will have less time because introductions, people being late, their equipment issues, and so forth. So you can always speak more, but think about how to make your slides as concise and clear as possible. And so if you are rushed for time, you can still get the key points aside. Now, some other instructions here. Besides the specifics of content, there's this instruction to have detailed speaker's notes. Now, in a workplace setting, this often comes up where you don't know who's going to be giving the presentation, and they might not have the expertise to just look at the slide outline and fill in the rest. And so part of your job is to give enough key stuff to guide whoever is speaking through the key points. And if they have some subject matter expertise or extra insights that they can throw in, great. But to be able to have them present off that if need be. Okay, so let's go ahead and look back at those instructions again. So we have some background setting, you might say. You have a change that's being proposed. There's a catalyst for discussion. And then more ingredients. So this is kind of background being turned into application now. All right, well, let's go ahead and think about what we want these to do. And what we want to avoid first is going to be a phenomenon called death by PowerPoint. More on that in a little bit. So as we approach the slides that you're going to create, we have a division between what you show the viewer and what you tell the reader. Or rather, I should say, you should have a division, because there are definitely people who don't divide these and they just read the text off the slides, and it can be excruciating and takes a lot of time, as these little images I've pulled out here are showing and making fun of. I call your attention to the example in the lower left-hand corner. Does this annoy you? Hello. You can start reading this slide now. While you're reading this, I will read it out loud to you. It might be the first time for both of us. Why are we doing this? Because I didn't prepare a real presentation. Hey, I'm not the first presenter to do this, so you can't blame me, can you? We both want to end this soon, but you know it won't end soon enough. I don't know about you, but by the time got to the end of the first bullet, I could have read the whole slide. And so, with rare exceptions where you're discussing particulars of the text, you don't want to do something like that where you transcribe your remarks. We want the things that are showed to the viewer to help them quickly clarify or identify, to help organize what they're hearing, or give them a framework for organizing what they're about to hear. And what you say out loud, you want to explain the points that are on there in more detail. So you're expanding their understanding and concretizing it by anchoring it to specific numbers, examples, other things like that. Well, we also want to keep your slides concise, and so that will create a contrast between the boiled down version on the slides and the more lengthy remarks that you keep in the speaker notes area, so you can see them, but your audience cannot. And if you're going to be talking a lot, like spending a lot of time on these slides, you probably want to be pre-organizing your slide content and connected remarks in a table in a Word document. Now, whether you used Word or Excel or Google Docs, the idea is the same. You are organizing the information in a way where it's very clear what's the detailed version, what is the more concise one, where you have a means of looking at one and either expanding or distilling to come with the other, and also where you're not starting from the point of, hold on, let me cram everything onto the slide, because then you'll usually end up in a situation like this example on the right, where I've marked it up with how to make it more concise and to use visual formatting. That would lead to something like the example on the left, which shows the relations with the lateral formatting, and also by removing a lot of the unnecessary words there, which you could say out loud when you're reading it, and makes it easier to follow the ideas. And in this case, the biochemistry of this. If you're curious, this is talking about muscle contractions. All right, so for this point, we're going to go to hands-on, and we're going to pull a couple examples from television to illustrate these concepts. So before we go any further, let's talk about that notes area, because I realize that some people may not be familiar with that. So I'm showing you the PowerPoint editing view, and I want to call your attention down here. We have a button here. Now, some of you may have clicked on this at some earlier point or have it showing by default, but if you haven't, it'll just be a button. And if we click on that, it'll pop open this little area here. Now you'll notice that that's rather narrow. You can drag this up, and in fact, once you've dragged it up to the top, we have a very small slide area by comparison. And so that can be a little hard to read for reference and take more time to copy and paste from if you're moving things around. So you might find that there's a handy balance here. For example, I could go back to this slide and give myself some instructions here. Now, in this particular instance, to give us an example to look at down here, I just asked ChatGPT to write some text here. Uh, this text is nothing worth paying attention to as anything other than it is an illustrative example because it is reiterating things that you've already heard. And there's a difference between repeating and then going over without really doing anything that changes it. And it's not so much repetitions of the same delivery, but getting it in the multiple formats, multiple wordings and such that tends to help people remember things. So, but with this example here, you can see, oh, we have divisions into paragraphs, in this case, with and that bullet form. And that makes it easy to see, okay, according to these notes, I'm supposed to say, there are lots of reasons why you should keep your slides concise. Conciseness in slides is essential for effective communication. When presentations are overloaded with text and information, blah, 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 blah. Now, in this case, I will tell you that because I instructed ChatGPT to write 150 words, you can get a clear idea that that's kind of 3 short paragraphs there. All right. Now, you could also be selecting and counting, but PowerPoint doesn't really have built-in tools to make that very easy. Oh, also quick tip. If you want a little bit more space here, close any formatting or other columns here, and then you get a little bit more space, and so you can zoom in on the slide and such. All right. With that, let's go ahead and now turn to look at how we would create an outline. Okay, so I have Microsoft Word here, and I'm going to go ahead and create a table. Simplest way, just go to the Insert tab and select Table. And with this quick table wizard, we're just going to draw out, okay, 2 columns, 8 rows. Great. And so now I can go ahead and just start putting things in here. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and do the specific assignment that was laid out here. We're not going to do this for a hospital, but we're going to follow a similar structure with a, shall we say, franchise that you'll probably recognize. So all I've done so far is I just took that outline from the instructions. And if you're wondering why I started with 8 rows here, well, because I can just start taking these things and putting them in here to get an idea of the distribution of content. So here, 2 to 3, okay. So I'm just going to put a number 1 there for me to track it there. Number 2. And then, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we need 7 to 8. So for our, if we're going to pick any of these that's going to be expanded, probably one of these. So let's add another one here. Let's make this another slide. All right, so I'm just going to take this, move it up. And it's the how could that be part. I'm going to take it here, and to show that it's connected, I'm just going to cross that out using the cross out feature. But I know that I'm going to be answering this. And here, this looks like the kind of thing that if you're going to be doing some expansion, that sounds like a good place to do it. And so I'll just label that number 1, number 2, and then we've got that reference slide in there. Great. So reference slide, you'll just, as you cite them, you can add them there. What we're really interested in is looking at what we might put here. And so in this case, we're going to change healthcare to something else. we're going to replace healthcare with the Song of Ice and Fire, which, if you're not familiar with that particular name, you probably know it by the name of the TV series based on it, Game of Thrones. So we are going to be going about this, and well, sit back and let's fill in a couple things to get started. Okay, so we have a couple bullets that I'm considering having in my slides, and here are the expansions. And in this case, if you're using animations, say having these coming in one by one, it may be helpful to label these in your text just by copy and pasting it over, so you know what this reading is supposed to coincide with that animation happening. What you should not do is have those animations and read out the text on the animations if you're doing this sort of expanded discussion. Now, our point here is not the details of that text there. It's that this is a illustrative model for how you might take these notes, keeping in mind that you can copy and paste from Word very easily into PowerPoint to get these on your slides and then take this whole section and paste it into your notes. So, all right, let's take a look at what this would look like in PowerPoint. All right, so we're back in PowerPoint now, and we're creating a new slide here. And we're just going to go ahead and start with putting these here. You can add a title here. In fact, they recommend it. Why conflict is everywhere. And so here, why conflict is everywhere, Westeros is divided into this, etc. Okay, we've got that. Now you can change the spacing later, that's cosmetic, but we want just to have the starting point. So I'm going to take my detailed notes and paste them in here. Now, you can see that there's a little extra stuff, but it's nothing that would stop us from being able to read this right now. Okay, now let's look at what this would look like in presenter view. To get to presenter view, I'm going to go to slideshow, and I'm going to click on presenter view. And what this will do is if you have two screens, it will show on one screen just the slides, and on the other, it will give you the slides and your notes. Let's take a look what that will look like. So here you can see that I've got my slides there, and I've got all my notes here, and it even tells me what the next slide that's coming up is. That is handy. Now, looking at this, there's a lot of dense text here, so we can improve the formatting for that. But as far as knowing where to be reading and seeing all the notes, you could, without having ever seen a episode of Game of Thrones and without having ever opened up one of the Song of Ice and Fire books, see, oh yes, Westeros is divided into 7 kingdoms. That animation comes up. Westeros, a land marked by political intrigue and feudal strife, is divided into 7 kingdoms, each ruled by noble houses. From the icy lands of the north to the sun-soaked reaches of Dorne, this segmentation fuels rivalries. The Iron Throne looms over them all, a coveted symbol of ultimate power. And as war ravages 7 kingdoms, coin grows scarce. Noble houses struggle to finance their armies and maintain their influence. The burden of war taxes weighs heavily on the peasantry, provoking unrest, etc., etc. Now, the next step is to go and visually clean this up a little bit. Okay, so let's add some more spacing there so these fit better. You could add some pictures if you want. So if you add images, an important thing to keep in mind is, are you enhancing or are you distracting? Now, if you it's been a while since you saw the show, it might be something where the geography is not clear. Now, you won't get a lot with this map being this small, but blow it up and say, okay, yeah, there are a bunch of different areas there. And if it's a very large screen, you can see, oh, yeah, or point to the north, the Reach, Dorne, etc. And then White Walkers, maybe people don't remember, maybe like, oh, the ice zombies. And so you see, say White Walkers, and you show the picture, and like, oh, yes, okay, got that. And then probably you would want to go ahead and control how the information is viewed so that we have Westeros is divided into 7 kingdoms. Okay, when that happens, that's a good time to go ahead and have a animation that's happening at the same time. So here, I'm going to add that there, and I'm going to change my timing so that it goes with the previous one. So these two will start together. And then same thing here. And in fact, I'm going to have this picture of the White Walkers. I'm going to have that come in large and cover the map of Westeros. And I'm also going to set that to go with the previous one. All right, let's take a look at how that appears in the presenter view. And keep in mind, we did our content outline first. We know what we're going to say on this slide. And so with that, we went and made the visual formatting more clear, easy to read, and added some visuals for pizzazz. Okay. So something I want to draw your attention to is that we have in a preview of whatever's happening next. That could be going to the next slide. It could be the next animation. So if we back up here, if we back up to the arrival on this slide, okay, why conflict is everywhere, we know. Okay, Westeros is divided into 7 kingdoms. I should be ready to read my notes once that pops up, like so. Westeros, a land marked by political intrigue and feudal strife, is divided into 7 kingdoms, each ruled by noble houses. From the icy lands of the north to the sun-soaked reaches of Dorne, this segmentation fuels rivalries. The Iron Throne looms over them all, a coveted symbol of ultimate power. And then you don't need to hear me talk about the money part. Let's see how this next one comes up with the White Walkers. And very important, a reason why conflict is happening, particularly in the North right now, because the chilling threat of the White Walkers emerges from the haunted North. And then you are replacing the visual that people were looking at before, the map, with the visual of the bullet you're not now talking about, because you don't need to compare things between these. And if people see, oh, the only thing that has changed is, oh, another bullet of text derived and this picture of White Walkers, then it helps them focus on the things that you are saying. But keep in mind, this all started with our having an idea of the text that was going to be said on that slide, which takes us back to our planning document in Word. So where would you go from here? Well, we knew from the instructions approximately how many slides we're going to have. You might look at this and say, well, maybe I'm going to move the White Walker stuff over here. That's fine. That's easy enough to do, because if we're changing it here in the planning, you can see we just click and drag that down. And that's an easy enough thing to do. We can add another slide as necessary. And we can add more things about conflict management, which I will say in the Song of Ice and Fire, conflict management usually does not end well for at least one party, sometimes both. Okay, so that's a look into how you can use this table format and planning to streamline, especially if you're part of a team, because if someone is working here and they say, all right, this slide is content is good, put it into PowerPoint, make it look nice, they will have the sketch of how to go about doing that already, even if they have no particular expertise in the content and area, because you've laid out the notes you've laid out the key points that you want on the slide. They can always massage that to make it look better, but they have enough to work with, and then you can keep on working on the next thing. In this case, the next slide. And whether you're doing this in Word and all in the same room, or whether you have a Google Doc where you have this shared and people can work on each row independently, that's fine. The point is to do this in an efficient fashion. And that's what having a pre-planning outline really lets you do, to work more efficiently. Let's run through this slide once more. Why conflict is everywhere. So I go ahead and I trigger the first animation, and I get my bullet and I get the image. Some people like to have one come after the other. You can set it to come a certain number of seconds after you hit the mouse or a manually trigger. But either way, we get these two pieces of information together. And as they're listening to you talk about Westeros being divided into 7 kingdoms, some people can poke around on the map and look, oh, hey, that's where those things are. And then when you get to this, you want them to not be looking at the map. You want them to be thinking, oh, man, those White Walkers look nasty. And then move on to your other slides. All right, well, if you have any questions, please feel free to check out our website for more resources, to check out APA style website if you need some examples and rules to follow for making your references slide content. You can send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu, and you can also make an appointment for feedback using our website and the links on this page. Did you know that you can request a feedback on a PowerPoint presentation? This happens very frequently. Many programs have people creating a presentation assignment, and you can come to us for this assignment too. So with that, catch you next time.